players in that ecosystem. So I'll just quickly run through some of the benefits for Suptech for regulators. So moving towards real-time supervision, so that kind of change from kind of periodic reporting to more real-time supervision, which is made possible through different Regtech providers. Being able to highlight anomalies or issues that stand out more effectively, so looking for exceptions more automatically. Being able to kind of automate implementation of regulation, which comes to the point that was made earlier in terms of machine readable and machine executable regulation. We're not there yet, but it's that process is starting to happen. Some of the regulators and industry people are looking at how they can automate that process to, when a rule is implemented, how can that be automatically changed within the processes of a business? It's a big ambition, but the fact that people are thinking about that and the technology is there means it could well happen in the not too far distant future. And then obviously kind of efficiency, supporting innovation, and helping to increase transparency. So these are all some of the kind of benefits that were highlighted by regulators that we'd surveyed. And then in terms of regulators, kind of the challenges they face in implementing their own Regtech solution. So they may lack the political will or the resources to be able to develop a Regtech solution. I'm sure in your business or in your organization you have lots and lots of different priorities. Is this new Regtech solution that you're trying to work on, is that going to overtake any of the other priorities that you're working on? Do you have like the institutional support from your leadership to be focusing on that? Often there are other priorities. Organizational structure. So many regulators at least are kind of traditionally quite risk averse. So trying out and experimenting with new technologies is maybe not something that is kind of culturally familiar to many regulators. So that kind of organizational cultural change that might be needed. Skills and expertise. So developers and kind of software engineers are in extremely high demand, and they often want to be paid lots of money. So how do you make sure that you're able to attract the best talent to your organization, as often public sector organizations? It's a real challenge. Legacy systems, so kind of older technology, how do you move away from older technology that everyone in your organization knows how to use, and that kind of shift to something new is obviously quite a challenge. Procurement, as we discussed earlier, kind of how do you onboard a new solution? It takes time and money. Okay. I think we'll come on to some of the case studies because we're running out of time here. And so I think some of the best case studies that we've seen is looking at Regtech as more of a public good. I think both regulators and regulated firms want regulation to be easier to engage with. They want it to cost less. They want it to cost less resource and time. People want to be compliant, but they don't like these kind of difficult manual processes that take a lot of people, time and energy. And also the amount of those is increasing massively given regulatory change. So I think some of the most interesting kind of potential use cases for Regtech is how you can look at this in terms of a public good. How can you create something that is good for the regulators and also for the market and for society, and focus less on, say, the commercial opportunity, but more of a kind of a market development side of things. So, for example, some of the initiatives we're seeing are shared ontologies or glossaries or data taxonomies, which basically means how do we make information standardized between different organizations? How can we think of ways to take reporting information and make sure that that is understood and accepted and communicated by everybody in the same way, so that we can avoid the time-consuming manual process of trying to mix different types of data together. So I think that's one area that is definitely of growing interest. Again, kind of standardized data formats and being able to share that data between different organizations. I think a really good example of that, which maybe you wouldn't call Regtech, but open banking. So being able to kind of standardize the communication of consumer transaction data so that a bank or a fintech or a consumer can easily share information about your accounts with any other organization that wants to use that data. But in order to do that, you need to have a common kind of data protocol or API to be able to share that information. So that's starting to happen, but that requires a whole industry to work together and have a common understanding. Otherwise, a Regtech firm or a fintech firm might just create a scraping tool to go into your system, get the data it wants, and just provide that information. But actually looking at a way to get everybody around the table and look at a common way to share that data is definitely kind of a key area of interest. Shared norms, so being able to bring in different stakeholders to get an understanding of how to deal with new technologies, and also kind of shared data lakes, both for regulators and the private sector firms. So that's kind of 4 areas in terms of Regtech as a public good. Very quickly, worth highlighting Regtech for regulators. So this is it's called R2A, which is basically an accelerator to help regulators think about what their pain points are. So firstly is like, what problems do regulators face, and be able to kind of prioritize these and rank these different problems. So you as an organization, you'll bring different people in different departments together and be able to kind of list all of your different problems. And then from there, you can then look at the different solutions. So as we've seen, there are many, many different Regtech providers out there, but once you as an organization have kind of prioritized and ordered all the things that you want to solve and make better, then you can go out to the different providers and invite different vendors to come and see if they can solve your problem and compete to do that. And then thirdly is really looking at a proof of concept. So can we go and test this with your team? Can we go and take this technology, apply it to your problem, and is that going to be, is that going to kind of solve your problem, and then can we roll it out from there? So the Central Bank of Philippines, they worked with R2A on 2 projects, on at least 2 projects. So firstly is about how they can automate the reporting process. So looking at a different kind of API providers to allow regulated firms to submit their reports digitally. That was kind of one of the use cases there. And secondly, as I mentioned before, creating a chatbot to enable customers of regulated firms to complain to the regulator about misconduct, for example. So these are kind of 2 examples there, which you can read more about when I share the presentation. For the FCA, there's 2 kind of very interesting kind of examples of what they do that are worth thinking to see whether or not they'll be relevant for your organisation. So firstly, the tech sprints. So the FCA identifies a particular problem area in financial services, and then they invite hundreds of people sometimes, academics, technology people, finance people, many different kinds of skills and perspectives to come together in like a hackathon, where you spend 2 or 3 days working together trying to think of different solutions in small teams to address this particular problem. So far I think they've done 7 or so of these. So for example, it might be looking at financial services and mental health. So if you have very severe mental health problems and you want to go and borrow a lot of money, should you be able to do that if you're in that kind of difficult situation at that time? Should your transaction be stopped if it's clear that your mental health is affecting your behavior, for example? AML and financial crime, being able to bring different people together to be able to look at different solutions for addressing AML and financial crime across different industries. And I think the key takeaway here is that regulators have a fantastic convening power to bring people together, to bring the private sector together to address a particular problem that, that people are focusing on. And then the second point is machine executable regulation. So this is still quite early in exploring, but if you imagine the diagram here, the top one, is a typical kind of compliance and reporting process. So there is a rule from the regulator. A human will interpret that rule and create a system to manage that rule. They will take data in relation to that rule, and then they'll produce a report which they send to the regulator to explain how they're complying with that rule. In the future, it will be pretty much the same process, but the FCA is looking at how, for example, we have a rule that is machine executable, so the regulator will be connected via, for example, APIs to a regulated firm. The rule will change, and there will be a system within either the regulator or the firm that will be able to automatically interpret what that change in the rule means, and then it will find the sources within the business or outside that relate to that rule and generate a report automatically, which would then automatically be sent to the regulator. So I guess this is kind of like quite far out there of where the process would want to go, but essentially the rule automatically change that links to the systems of the businesses that are regulated, and that will then enable the regulated firm to automatically comply with the regulation. So that is very, very early days, but definitely something to keep an eye out. So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for your attention. I think you've got a fantastic couple of days ahead. I'm very happy to speak to any of you if you've got any further questions in the break. Thank you very much for your time. And the presentation will also be available online. So.
Okay, so thank you, Kieran, for that wonderful presentation. So we would also like to invite everyone to join us at the challenge pitch for the innovation challenge that we have, and also some cocktails at the next door. Thank you.